thrilled to introduce Linda Pesilo. Is it correct?
Tessia.
Pesilo. She serves as a senior mechanical engineer and design group leader at Lawrence National Lab in Livermore. She also leads various groups throughout the lab, including Women in Science and the Early Career Employees Group. She program as often as she can to those interested in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and strongly advocates for improving diversity in STEM field. Linda graduated with a master's degree and bachelor's in engineering from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in 2015. So Linda will present her work, and then we'll have maybe 15 minutes for questions and answers, okay?
All right, hello, everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear. Can you guys hear me okay in the back? Okay, great. So like Lashana said, my name is Linda Tessia. I am a senior mechanical engineer and group leader at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, just 20 minutes down the highway. I'm excited to be presenting to you all here today. This presentation is really just a walkthrough of kind of my experience in STEM. Hopefully you guys resonate with some of it, and I really hope that this is, you feel comfortable enough to ask questions. I really want to have you guys engaged. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to let me know. We'll have time at the end as well. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so a little bit about me. Like I said, I work at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. I've been there for about 8.5 years now. I started as a mechanical engineer supporting our weapons programs. There's a picture of me holding one of our weapons, not the whole thing because it's really heavy, but part of it. Really got involved in our defense mission at the laboratory from day one and have been really involved in that mission to date for the last 8.5 years. About 3 or 4 years ago, became a design group leader. So I'm actually a manager over a group of about 10 to 11 people. So that's been an interesting experience. I'll talk about that a little bit later. As Amsana mentioned, I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I went there, did my bachelor's and master's. They have a blended accelerated master's program. So I was able to do my bachelor's and master's within 5 years, and was able to graduate and get a job at the laboratory. A little fun thing about me, just so you guys can get to know me as a person a little bit. Like I said, I went to Cal Poly. One of my biggest hobbies is singing. I've been in choir pretty much my whole life. Had a picture there performing at Carnegie Hall when I was at Cal Poly. So really, really cool experience there. Probably like a lot of people here, love binge watching shows. So afterwards, if you have any good recommendations, I'm more than happy to hear them. So, all right, next slide.
Mohammed, where did you go?
No worries. So I'll talk a little bit more about the clicker's not working. Oh, now it is. Is it working? Or I'll take it if it's working. Fantastic. Okay. Perfect. So how did I get into engineering? This story, the more I tell it, the more I realize that a lot of people have the same experience of how they're interested in engineering. So to start, I'm a little curious based on who's in the room, how many are interested in going into a STEM related career? Raise your hand. Oh, wow. Okay. So that's a good portion of you. That's exciting. Like many of you that are interested in that career, I loved math and science when I was a kid. Those were kind of the things that I just seemed to be really good at. I enjoyed it. It was interesting to me. Similarly, I was not a fan of reading in the English and history class. So, kind of a different skill set, different interests from the beginning. And then as a kid, I really enjoyed taking things apart. So, if you were one of those kids who tore apart your parents' different appliances or played with Legos and built things, that was kind of where I was as a kid. So, but to me at the time, I didn't really know what engineering was. So to me, I didn't see that as kind of a message into what I truly wanted to do with my career. So I didn't even hear about engineering until I was in high school, actually about to start applying for colleges. When my physics high school teacher had made a suggestion saying, hey, you should probably look into engineering, just generally. And I was like, well, I don't really know what that is. Can you tell me a little bit more? And he would start to go into, well, they design things and they make planes and they make cars. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that sounds pretty interesting. But I really didn't know what an engineer truly did. And I didn't fully understand and appreciate that there were so many different varieties of engineers. Mechanical, aerospace, electrical, all sorts of different kinds of engineers. So it took me until much later to realize what an engineer actually truly was. Once I got into college, started to learn more kind of about what an engineer is, but even then, it probably took me a year or two to really get a grasp of kind of what a day in the life would really look like. I think one of the harder parts was that it was hard for me as a woman to envision myself as an engineer. Typically because whenever I would get talks like this or see engineers in the media or in talks or whatever, they were typically always male. And so it was really hard for me to understand, okay, well, how does a woman look? What does a woman look like? So it was really hard for me to do that. Plus, it was amplified by the fact that I was typically one of the only women in my classes, particularly my STEM classes. So again, when you're surrounded by a bunch of dudes all the time, it's hard to envision yourself in that career path and fully understand that you fit in. So it took me a while to feel comfortable with an engineering. That being the case, I really was for a community at Cal Poly in particular, that essentially wanted to connect with other women in engineering. And other women who were kind of dealing with the same things that I was dealing with, feeling like the minority in the room, feeling like we have to prove ourselves to show that we belong and that we are worthy of being here. So I got involved. There's a engineering sorority that exists internationally. It's actually STEM, a sorority. So I helped found a chapter at Cal Poly to create a community for the people who were kind of in the same place in life that I was. So that became an amazing opportunity to meet other women in STEM and also, connect with them. Oh, now it's not working again.
Now it's not working.
So the next slide is going to talk a little bit about how I got more into my actual career in industry. So once I actually started in engineering, one of the main things that they always tell you is, okay, well, you need to get internships and you need to try to find a job in engineering. The main problem I was running into was that I would always be told, well, what experience do you have? We're not going to give you an internship until you have some sort of experience. And I said, well, I can't get experience until you give me an internship. So it's kind of this catch-22. So it took me a while to get there. I ended up having to take an internship in my hometown, which was in Bakersfield, back in the Valley, and got involved in the oil industry, which is an industry that I personally had zero interest in at the time. But I was wanting the experience. So I took the opportunity, did an internship in that industry. Turned out that it was actually a really good experience because it helped teach me what I liked to do and what I didn't like to do, which is kind of a theme that I ended up building throughout my career. So I had that first internship, great experience, made a lot of connections, built my network, and ultimately got that first bit of experience that would qualify me to get, more flashy, so to speak, internships. So moving on through college, started getting my bearings a little bit, got really involved in various clubs, which I'm sure you guys have here or are aware of, clubs that are interest-based, so things like Society of Women Engineers, but also like project clubs, so clubs that are actually building things and giving you that hands-on experience. So those I highly recommend to anyone who's interested in STEM. And so I was able to get another internship, this time at Eaton, which was a company that is international, and they put me in their clutch engineering division. So I was building and designing clutches for 18-wheelers and large vehicles, which was at the time, again, something that I thought was quite interesting. But then quickly found out maybe it's not something I actually like. So I tried it, really excited about it when I started, and then quickly found out, yeah, this is not for me. Again, a very good learning experience there. But again, got more experience in engineering, so I got to see a different aspect of it. That was an internship that actually also drove me away from California. Me being from California, no worries, I'll speak loudly. Me being from California, good, okay, perfect. Me being from California, I never wanted to leave. And so this was like, again, another opportunity for me to learn. Oh, and there goes Kim. It was another opportunity for me to learn, whether I actually was open to the idea of leaving California, which for a lot of people from California seems like a great idea. But it gave me some insight on that type of life choice down the road. Then I ended up starting my master's program. So at Cal Poly, you have a blended master's program. So you kind of are starting your master's program as finishing up your bachelor's. So while I was doing that, I had gotten an internship at Apple. And this was kind of my, oh my God, finally got an internship at Apple. This is kind of what like every engineer wants. They want the big flashy company making, things that people see every day. So, this was like, yes, I got it. This is like, I met my goal. This is my dream. So I got there, I ended up working in their battery area. So doing a lot of testing on batteries, making sure that they okay, perfect. So I did a lot of testing on batteries. So the batteries in your phones, your iPads, your laptops, Apple TVs, all that kind of stuff. And how those age and how they degrade over time. So as you probably know, your battery doesn't do very well after a while. So I was part of a team that was helping to characterize that and try to make it better. Once I got to Apple, again, this was kind of the resounding theme for me, was I was very excited going in, but I very quickly learned that Apple was not the place for me personally. And so there's a lot of reasons behind that. And if you guys have specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer those. But I think for me, it was an opportunity for me to kind of get my dream job and learn what I liked and what I didn't like. It was also a great opportunity to create a really good network. So at Apple, there are so many engineers, so many people from all around the world that work there. And those people, through LinkedIn or social media, you're able to keep in contact with those people. So even to this day, still get messages from people at Apple saying, hey, do you want to come back and work for Apple? So one of those things where it just kind of opens up doors for you, even if it's not something you're necessarily looking for right away. Later on, finished my master's and ended up kind of making the jump into an even newer industry, which was defense, which was an industry I had never tried before, but was interested in, and came to work at Lawrence Livermore. I also was originally from LA, so I was kind of scared of the Bay Area, given that what people say, LA versus the Bay. But made the jump, made the leap, and came to the Bay Area and worked at the lab. And very quickly learned that it is a very cool place to work. A lot of cool projects going on, a lot of interesting work beyond just the defense mission that I was able to be involved in. And it was really an interesting experience. The one thing that I also quickly learned is that everyone at the laboratory has a security clearance, or pretty much everyone at the laboratory needs a security clearance for their job. And so that process does take a long time. So I actually took about 1.5 years to get my clearance. So in that time, I was like, well, I can't actually do the job I was hired to do. So instead of twiddling my thumbs, kind of getting paid to do nothing, I chose to take the opportunity to look around the laboratory and help with other projects around the lab. Because again, I didn't want to just sit bored all the time. And so the lab, you may have heard of the National Ignition Facility. So the big giant laser, we just achieved ignition, which is really exciting. In that area, had a lot of really cool work going on. And I was able to get involved in a project that actually lasted almost about that whole year. That again made me network with different people. I was able to meet lots of different kinds of engineers and different scientists as well. So it was a great opportunity to learn more about the laboratory and network around the laboratory. Fast forward maybe 5-6 years, and the opportunity comes for me to apply to be a group leader. And this kind of delving into the challenges a little bit in that the laboratory is an interesting place in its time, in that the demographic of the laboratory right now is very bimodal, in that about half of the laboratory has been at the lab for less than 5 years. And the other half, for the most part, has been there well over 20 or so. So there's kind of this gap in the middle. And what that ends up manifesting as is a lot of people start retiring, and it opens up a lot of positions and management and leadership positions. But the laboratory was in a unique position to say, okay, well, usually we would hire group leaders and managers once they've been at the laboratory 10 to 15 years. It's kind of like an unspoken kind of rule that the laboratory had for a very long time. But in the new times, with the culture and the demographic being the way that it is, it opened up an opportunity for me to say, well, tell me who you have who's 10 to 15 years at the laboratory. There's really no one. So it opened up the floodgates for a lot of newer, earlier career engineers to become leaders early. So I was able to become a group leader, which was very exciting, a little daunting, because I'm now managing people who are older than me, who have more experience than me. And so that is a unique experience that I still to this day am learning how to manage. But it's a unique opportunity to be able to do that. So as I went through this entire journey to kind of where I am today, I definitely faced a lot of challenges. So I wanted to kind of step through maybe some of the things that I thought were kind of the major things that I had to face as I went through these things. The first being, you know, in honor of our Women's History Month talk here today, being a minority in STEM. So not only myself being a woman, but also being a Latina woman in STEM was quite the experience, because especially going through internships, getting a job, becoming a group leader, definitely often find myself being the only woman in the room, and very often being the only Latina or minority demographic in the room. It's getting a lot better now that the laboratory is hiring more diverse staff, but it's even throughout that whole journey, it was quite the experience. Kind of going back to what I was saying before about trying to feel like you belong. Do you feel as though you are truly deserving of being there? Feeling you have to prove yourself a little bit more to prove that you deserve to be there. Wanted to try to overcome that, and still to this day, obviously is still an issue. There's what, 20% of women in STEM nationwide. So it's definitely still a minority, but getting better. I talked a little bit about getting enough experience to try to get internships off the bat. I think this was something that was definitely really hard. And I think, you know, you folks coming from a community college, you know, you guys are in a unique position where you're kind of starting to get into your educational career, maybe still trying to figure out what you want to do. maybe not ready for internships yet, but willing to explore those opportunities. But again, trying to figure out how you set yourself up for that. And I found that there are a lot of different things that people always push internships, but there's also research opportunities that, you know, even if maybe you don't get paid, but at least you're getting the experience. There's working at universities, teaching classes, or working at high schools, teaching engineering classes to students and things like that, where you can actually be engaged with your STEM area and be getting experience that companies value. So kind of a lot of different ways to help build up that experience over time. Questioning the status quo. I think I talked a little bit about that in how to manage how I manage getting a group leader job so early. But I think a lot of times, a lot of these companies, no matter where you go to work, it could be the lab, it could be anywhere, kind of have these systems and processes in place. They kind of do things the way that they like to do them, and that's just the way it is. But as I was progressing through my career and I wanted to get more experience in different areas, I typically would find that, you know, I would get resistance at any of the companies saying, okay, well, but your job is to do this. And it's like, okay, but if I have time and I want to learn more, why can't I do more? And so that's just one example of kind of trying to advocate for yourself, but also questioning the methods that the organization that you're in is using to benefit yourself and help yourself grow. Another thing that I definitely learned very quickly, which you also learn in college, is how to work with different personalities and work styles. You get a flavor of it in college. And I say a flavor because, you know, you're only with these people for a couple of years. You're maybe on a class project with them for a couple months. And then you're like, whew, okay, I don't have to work with that person again. So you kind of get rid of the people that you don't necessarily like working with right away. But in industry, you don't get off that easy. You are working with these people every single day. You can't change your job because of someone you don't like. Well, I mean, you can, but you can't do it all the time. And so you have to work with so many different types of people. And that's quite challenging. I tend to be someone who asks a lot of questions. I'm very outgoing, enthusiastic, extroverted, and I tend to clash a lot of times with people who are quite the opposite. So you have to just learn how to work with these different personalities and different work styles. And I'll touch a little bit on that on the next slide. Another thing I really was challenging for me, especially working at the laboratory, was wanting to say yes to everything. And so this kind of goes back to wanting to learn, wanting to grow, but also wanting to prove myself as a woman and as a minority in STEM, that I belong. And so I want to show everyone, hey, look at all this stuff I can do. Look at how I can do everything well. And I quickly learned that the more responsibility you take on, the more work you have, the more visibility you get, sure, but you can't, the more time you end up spending on that work. So I think one of the things I didn't truly value early in my career, or even just in college, was the promise of good work-life balance. Mainly because you kind of think about all these flashy jobs, you're like, oh my gosh, they'll pay me, you know, 6-figure salaries, and I'll get all this stock, and I'll do all these things, but then you don't fully appreciate the fact that you're working 80 to 100 hours a week. And so you never actually get any time to spend the money and enjoy it. And so for me, I learned very quickly, the more I say yes, the more work I take on, sure, and the more experience I'm getting, but I have to be cognizant of my work-life balance. And so again, that might be not something you guys are thinking of quite yet, but as you start thinking about a job and your career, is something that is crucial to being able to make that decision. And then the last thing is figuring out where to go in my career. I think that's the hardest question that most people in their careers, you know, try to deal with on a daily basis is, You know, you're at where you're at, you got, you know, you did this journey to get to where you are today. But where do you go from there? You know, the world is your oyster. You have all these companies, all these industries, all these jobs that you could go into. What is it that you as a person want to do for the next 20 years? And that is still a question that I'm grappling with to this day. But I think it's something that, kind of like what I'll touch on again, it really depends on what you like and what you don't like. And so I think ultimately, work is a job, right? And it's for money. But if you don't truly appreciate and enjoy what you're doing, then it's obviously not a very enjoyable experience, and it becomes more of a chore. So I vowed that wherever I go next in my career, it has to be something that I like, and it has to be something that makes me excited to get up in the morning and not lay there and say, oh, I don't have to go to work. This sounds awful. I don't want to do this. You don't want a job like that. That just sounds miserable. So just being cognizant of the fact that whatever step you take next, whether it be here in school or what major you go into, what college you go to, make sure it's a decision that makes you happy. All right, so this is my last slide, and I'll just walk through some of the lessons that I've learned in my time throughout. And again, we've kind of touched on some of these already. And this is just the highlights that I could think of at the time. So the first thing that I would say, is make sure to cherish your time in college, which probably coming from someone who's already graduated from college kind of sounds kind of weird saying, but essentially definitely don't rush it. I think one of my biggest regrets from college was that I tried to take so many classes at once. I tried to graduate as fast as I possibly could. I barely got any sleep. I barely had time to enjoy hanging out with my peers, enjoy the area that I was in, which San Luis Obispo, a beautiful area. Didn't really have a chance to enjoy it a whole lot. I did eventually once I learned this lesson, but it's still very important. College is a very unique time of your life, so cherish it while you can. So the next thing would be, again, this is kind of like my biggest takeaway for, if you guys remember only one thing, it would be this, and that definitely figure out what you like and what you don't like. I think any experience that you have that allows you to learn what you don't like may seem like a waste of time, but it's actually ridiculously valuable, because now you know explicitly, like, I don't want to do that. I don't want a career in that space. I don't want to work in a place like this. I don't want to work with people like this. I don't want to work in this place. It gives you it focuses your vision for where you want to go and who you want to be a lot better. We talked about being comfortable saying no. I think the biggest lesson that I learned in this one was that saying no is not a bad thing. If anything, people respect you more in industry for being self-aware enough to know when to say no, and to know when you can't take more work on, and to know, hey, you know, I really don't like doing that. Like, if you're gonna give it to me, I'm gonna need it. So I'm gonna say no. People respect you for being self-aware. So I think, obviously don't say no to everything and do nothing, right? But I think it's very important for you guys to realize the things you definitely don't like to do. Again, we talked about personalities and work styles. I think once you, kind of similarly to how you are in college, you are almost always working on teams in industry. You're very rarely working by yourself. And so I think having those diverse work styles and personalities can actually be used to your benefit, especially if you become a leader. Because everyone has kind of a unique way that they work. They have a unique skill set. And if you learn how to take advantage of and maximize everyone's potential and interests, then you can, you know, have people who love to talk to people go do that portion of your job and say, hey, you're going to be the person who talks to people because I don't like talking to people. So you go do you, and our team will be more successful because of it, or whatever the case may be. And so learning how to leverage the different personality styles is very key, even in class projects, right? Or whatever, in college projects, can be very key to making sure that you're successful and you're using everyone most efficiently. A big one that I didn't really talk about a lot during the presentation, but here at the end, to definitely find mentors and advocates for yourself. So a mentor and an advocate, those are two different things. A mentor is someone who helps answer your questions, helps you kind of as a sounding board to, hey, maybe this is what I'm thinking. Can you help me kind of work through this? Maybe gives you some guidance on issues that they faced in their career to help you like not make the same mistakes that they made. Those types of things. That's a mentor. An advocate is someone who will, wherever you are, whether it be in college or industry or wherever, will serve as an advocate for you in various arenas, meaning that they are willing to stick their neck out for you to, say, hey, maybe Linda would be great for that leadership position. Or, hey, maybe we should think about interviewing Linda for this group lead job or this new role. Or, hey, we're doing a new project. I think Linda would be a great fit for that. So someone who's willing to stand up for you in the venues that you're not able to stand up for yourself. And so I think people like that are hard to find because advocates have to fully believe in you in order to do that for you. And so you really have to take the time to meet people, build your network, and find people who are interested enough in your career that they want to see you succeed. And so they're willing to work with you to make that happen. The next would be, the last two are about community. So the second last one is finding your community. So again, kind of going back to the woman in STEM thing, being a woman in STEM is not easy. And so, I needed to find a community of people that can relate to what I'm going through and help me through that. And so finding a community of, whoever relates in your specific area, whether it be, your demographic, your religion, your beliefs, your sexual orientation, whatever the case may be, finding a community of people that you relate to helps you succeed. It helps you be your whole self and it helps you achieve your maximum potential. And so finding that community is key wherever you are. There's a lot of times where there won't be a community established in your space or where you may not know where to find it or you just can't find it. Excuse me. And so the big thing I would advocate for is establish a community for yourself if one doesn't already exist. So similarly to like I was saying, standing up an engineering sorority at a university sounds a little ridiculous and it sounds crazy, but it was doable and achievable. And it built a community for people way past when I graduated to be able to have that community. So, wherever you are in your college, in your workplace, this is something that pretty much everywhere now is advocating for. It's like, hey, if you want a group, build a community, a group, a club, an organization, a networking group, whatever the case may be, that helps you feel like you belong and helps you feel like your full self every day, then definitely go for it. And not only is that a good thing for you in that you can be your full self, but it also helps you can be a leader and you can initiate things. So thinking like on a resume, right? Or in an interview, you're like, hey, maybe I don't have all this experience that you're looking for, but I built this from scratch and I did this on my own initiative. And so those types of things are things that people value. And those are the things that set you apart. So definitely wanted to advocate for that. That was all I had in my slides. So I know we still have about 20 minutes. So wanted to open it up for questions.
Yes, questions from the audience. I'll pass the mic to you if you have questions.
After finishing your studies, would you say it was a hard transition into finding a career, and how long did it take for you to secure that career?
That's a good question. It took a while. I think I ended up, it probably took on the order of about 8 months from when I started looking for my full-time job to when I actually got the offer letter from the lab. So it took a while. Some companies are a lot faster, so it just depends, but for me, it took a while. And I think, I was exploring a lot of different options at the time, so I was also balancing, you know, going to this company or whatever, but again, a lot of things didn't feel right, so I let those opportunities pass. Just because, but then at the end, I started getting a little nervous. I'm like, well, crap, I'm about to graduate, so better find something. Something's got to pay the bill. And so, thankfully, the lab came around and offered me a job. So it took a while. The transition itself was a little hard. I think the one thing I didn't appreciate coming out of college and going into just being an adult, so to speak, was that you're no longer surrounded by a bunch of people that are your age that you could just make friends with, and meet and hang out with. So becoming an adult was like, okay, well, where are my friends? Like, how do I make friends here? Because now you go to work and you're surrounded by people who are in other, you know, other stages of their careers, other stages of their lives. And so I think myself and several of my peers had a really hard time transitioning into the workplace setting because we just didn't know how to make friends in that environment. So that was something that I found challenging.
Earlier, you said that you had one regret, was that you were so focused on finishing as many courses that you can. What was the highlight of your undergrad? Like, what was like the most fun part, like something that will always stick with you or resonate with you?
That's a hard one. I definitely think like one of them, you know, would be going to New York and singing at Carnegie Hall was pretty cool. That's definitely from being a singer. I think that's a highlight for a lot of people who have had that opportunity. I think in general, I could probably say some of my best memories from college. I don't remember. I mean, I remember the nights I stayed up late and did all-nighters and worked my ass off, right, to get homework or projects done or whatever. But I think the things that I remember most vividly and positively the most are like the days I just went to the beach with my friends and the days where we just went shopping. So it's the days where you just get to relax and not think about school for like even just a portion of a minute. Those are the times that I think I cherish the most. Yeah.
Intelligent, ambitious are the adjectives that I can describe for you.
Oh, thank you.
Is there anything that you want to work on the future long-term goals,
You mean like career-wise?
career-wise, or anything in your personal life? Because I think what you have going on in your life is very, very impressive.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That's a hard one. I think kind of to my point earlier, I am at a point in my career where I'm trying to figure out what my options are. I know personally, I want to go into management, technical management. I don't want to be an administrative manager because I like engineering and I don't want to lose the technical nature of my job. Even if I'm not doing the technical work, I at least want to be involved. So I know I want to do that. But past that point, no idea. Open to opportunities, is probably the best way to say it. We have time, it's fine.
He doesn't ask it.
No worries, ask as many questions as you have. I'm an open book.
Other questions?
Mohammed.
Okay, I was curious about why it left Apple and I had to then it talks about throughout your career, you felt like you were the only one in the room. A lot of times with me too. So I was wondering if like that had anything to do with it or if that's like not related at all.
Oh, there you go. So yeah, I'll repeat the question. So the question was why I left Apple and if being the only woman in the room contributed to that. Is that pretty much what, so to the second part, no, that was not the reason I left. I didn't want to go back to Apple. I think for me personally, I touched on it a little bit, but ultimately the main reason I did not want to go back to Apple was because even though I wasn't on like the iPhone team or like the flashy teams, which is kind of what everybody wants, I had a lot of friends who were when I worked there, and they were working ridiculous hours as interns, and that was the expectation. And they were working less hours than what was expected from a full-time employee. So I had a friend who was working on the iPhone team who was working 100 to 120 hours a week, which is, if you do the math, up to 3 times as much of what you're actually paid for the week, 40-hour work week. So he would come home for 4 hours, sleep, and then go right back to work. So I saw that a lot personally, and that was not kind of going to my decision for work-life balance. That was not something I wanted. The money was very enticing, right? They pay really well. They give you lots of stock options, so they get you, nice flashy equipment and technology and all this stuff. But for me, it was just not the right decision because I just knew personally I was not gonna be able to do that. So there are a lot of people who are fine with that. I still have a lot of friends who work at Apple. And it is a great company. You need to find the right experience for you as a person. And for me, that was not it.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're. Sure.
Oh, okay.
So why did those people work all those extra hours? And like, could they have gotten out of it without having to just leave the company?
Obviously I didn't stay there long enough to find out all the options people had there, but I saw enough that, as an intern in certain groups, there was a higher expectation than another. So in my group, for example, that expectation was not there. So that's why I actually really enjoyed my group. I actually tried to go back to my group at full time. Turns out they weren't actually hiring full time at all. So I was like, well, why did you hire an intern if you're not planning on hiring anybody? That sounds dumb. So, yeah, I think there are likely good options in any company that's like that, right? I think there are options, other places in the laboratory or at Apple where the work-life balance is different. So like even at the lab, I'll give you an example. At the lab, my job is very good work-life balance. If I'm there late, people ask me why I'm still there and why I'm not home. Go home, why are you still here? But my husband, for example, works in NIF, which is, if you don't know, a 24/7 facility where they are doing experiments 24/7, 365. And so they are a production facility where people have to maintain the rate of shots and keep experiments going. And so his job is quite different in that he gets calls on Saturdays, he has to go to work on Sundays sometimes, working late hours. So it just depends. And like I'm saying, any company has these variety of options. So you just have to find the right fit for you. So yes, there are opportunities to change.
Okay, so you're saying, it goes back to what you're saying, like you have to figure out what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Thank you so much. How did you get your first internship and did you do it with no experience or?
I did it with no experience. I got it through the career fair at my college. I went to every company and kind of like said, hey, I'm looking for an internship. Got anything for a sophomore? And a lot of companies said no. We hire juniors, senior level. We want you to have more experience. And it was kind of discouraging. The company that I actually got a job with was based in my hometown. So it just so happened that they liked the fact that I was from the town that they were from. And so I think it almost, to some degree, was kind of gotten out of convenience, which worked well for me because I got an internship out of it. But especially some of those smaller companies, they're not as flashy, right? So they tend to be a little bit more open with their criteria of who they're willing to hire. So they're willing to take risks on students who don't necessarily have the experience. They're willing to teach you. So that worked out well for me. but yeah, getting like an Apple internship out of sophomore year, like if someone got that at Cal Poly, you were like, what, who are you? Like, what do you do? You obviously are like crazy smart. So, yeah, but that is not the norm at all. So, yeah.
And I had a question about kind of your regular, like, day-to-day or workday kind of schedule, just like as you're just curious, in your position as well, and for how much experience you've had. So just wondering about that.
Good question. So my day-to-day is not the same every day, which is, I like that. I get bored really easily sitting at a desk staring at a computer all day. So I like moving around, doing different things. So for me, there are a lot of days where I do have to sit at my computer all day and answer emails and make presentations and review documents and things like that. But I actually travel a lot for work, for my job. So usually I'm on travel at least one, usually up to 3 weeks per month. Which again, I like that. So talking about kind of like work-life balance, right? Like that's a piece of a job that you have to be willing to do. And so for me, I really like it. And so I get to go to a different facilities and watch things happen, watch parts being made, watch parts being put together, taken apart. I enjoy that a lot. So kind of a day in the life for me looks different from day to day, but I think it spans all over the place. But for me, it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you
How do you deal with like the moral ambiguity of like working in defense? Like,
Good question. That's a great question. So yeah, defense is an interesting job because, yeah, there is the question of you're making weapons. How do you live with yourself? Like, how do you work on that every day? And I think the thing, especially in the nuclear weapon side where I work, for me, which is a little different because these are weapons that no one wants to use. They're kind of there as a kind of like there's like the big stick, right, that the United States can wave and say, hey, we have these, we prove that they work. So they kind of are used as their existence is the defense. And so for me, I think that's how I've been okay with it, in that I have never once met anyone at the laboratory or in the defense industry that I work in where they're like, hell yeah, let's go bomb people. Like, no one says that. Everyone says we do not want to use these. We hope because we know they work and we know what they can do. So we don't want them to be used. And so I think for us, it's how can we make sure that they're effective, but how can we also make sure that, we support our nation and trying to make sure they're never used in the way that they're intended to be used. And a lot of my job actually focuses on how can we make the weapons safer. So if anything does happen or an accident happens and things like that, how do we make sure that it doesn't go off when we don't want it to go off? So I think that's the other piece of it, is that you have to have a very specific need, use, where the president, right, or Congress, whoever makes the decision to use them. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's a little different. I probably would have more of a problem working in other areas of defense, to be quite honest. But for me, this is more okay. I'm more okay with this area than others. Yeah.
Good question. One more question, okay?
What level of security clearance did you need for your job? And did you run into any issues coming from a minority background?
That's a great question. So at the laboratory, pretty much everyone needs a Q clearance, which is essentially the DoD equivalent of a top secret clearance. So that's usually like the bare minimum. And then there's like additional allowances and permissions beyond that you can get for whatever job function you need to do. For me, thankfully, most of my family was born in the United States. And so I didn't have too much problem. My mother was born in Mexico. So in my opinion, it probably took a little bit longer for my investigation to happen because of that. I've known people who have family in what we call sensitive countries, which are countries that are, politically not in a great place with the United States. And I have seen their clearances take longer, but it just depends. We kind of joke that the clearance process is like a big black box. Kind of throw all your information in and then one day, eventually your clearance pops out the other side. So it's really hard to tell. So some people get it super fast, even though they have contacts in foreign countries, and some people take it forever, even though they've never traveled outside California in their life. So it just really, really depends. Yeah. Any other?
I think that our time is up, unfortunately. Maybe we'll see you again next semester.
Maybe.
I hope so. And we'll have more questions for you.
Sure.
Thank you so much for your wonderful story, for sharing it.